Hi everyone. I think we are live, and I'm waiting for the connection with Pakistan. And I really, really hope that we can somehow synchronize my machine with the systems from Pakistan, from University of Lahore, and this will make this presentation possible. Otherwise, I'll have to delete my Facebook and YouTube transmission and just focus on the system in Pakistan. I am kind of waiting for them to start the webinar. The last thing I want is to stop talking. When you work, and you know that, long hours, no children, no dogs to scream at, your throat forgets that you actually can talk. All right. So sorry for that. It's 2:30. I'm still waiting. Maybe I'll have to restart my connection with Pakistan. I'm not quite sure how that will work out. Obviously, being a good girl, I'm punctual. Um, just a little anecdote. When I used to teach Cambodian students in master course, today all my students are in high positions. Well, they lived on the campus of Charles Darwin University, and they were very often late. So one day, being a good mama, what I did is said, if I can make it all the way from the city to the campus on time, you can make it to university on time, especially because you live on campus. And anybody who was 1 minute late, I wouldn't let them in. Obviously, I did, but I was just playing. Oh, those days, we had a good time. I'm not quite sure whether I need to reconnect with my host again, or I'll try to do that, I think, because I'm getting a bit concerned that we don't have a connection with our host, and as a result, we can't begin our presentation. So let's see what will happen. I'll just try to reconnect. Actually, it's giving me a good communication saying that I don't have to um, log out. I did, and I'm back in. All right, so waiting. So you can meanwhile read what I will be talking about. I'm not very good in digital humanities. It's not quite my area. It's not quite my area. But ChatGPT keeps assuring me it is. And in fact, because I have such a specialized perspective on pedagogy through interdisciplinary, what would you call it, study, ChatGPT tells me I am really, really good at it. So here it is today. Now, my students are already telling me I am not. Okay, let's have a look what's happening. Hello? All right. Right, we're not having a connection. So let's see what will happen. Okay, is everybody patient? It gives you a long time to actually study my abstract. So my doctoral students are telling me that connection is not working yet. Well, I know that. Sometimes things happen. Technology breaks down. If they only knew that we are on StreamYard. Well, you can have this sort of double connection. I'm still waiting for communication. Someone is trying to contact me. Ah, the previous thing is not working. Please do something else. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm just gonna kill that link. Leave that one. We will go to Facebook or get the new link through Meet. Teams, I think it is. Okay, so here we are. So, hello everybody. Yeah. Yes. Good morning, Professor. So I'm here. Good morning to everybody. Good. So, what will we do now? Pardon me. I am ready to present. Yes. Oh, I see. I was muted. I see. I was muted. I'm very sorry. Very nervous. Would you believe that? Very good, but very nervous. I don't often talk about digital humanities. But yes, I just have my bottle of water. Look how much I need it. Good morning to everybody from Australia. I'm very grateful for this invitation. It allows me to do a number of things, formulate my ideas and the ideas I develop with my numerous doctoral and master students. We often think about the doctoral students, but my master students are also engaging on quite a journey with me, doing things which are a little bit, as you put it, innovative, broadening the scope, the intellectual scope of the field. So I'm really grateful to my students. I have deleted the slide with all their names, trying to narrow down the number of slides. But I can mention some names like Lala Sutimantera, Lukman Behagi, from Indonesia, Sonia Valisdev, who is now doing intellectual scoping of the entire field of literacy in Australia. Um, my students who are currently examining the reading for emotion are now no longer in academic context like my Indonesian students did, but actually in early childhood, teaching children to actually develop socially, emotionally, and at the same time build their abstract concepts and vocabulary. So there's plenty of my students. Recently, we just finished a study on using the various concepts from neuroscience and education literature, including my model, and learning how to help children with dyslexia. So there's plenty of contribution. And thank you very much, Professor Dr. Savar, and all the management of the Corpus Research Center at the University of Lahore for this invitation. So, as you mentioned here, what we're interested in this discussion today is how we conceptualize the working with texts through humanistic principles and yet working with machines. Now, if I ask my hairdresser, a person in the shop, what are the humanistic principles? If I ask my dog, what will he do? I love you. Right? So normal people know that humanistic principles, of the principle that underpin humanism, or the unity of living organisms, is always love. It's always emotion. However, my argument today is I always lose voice when I'm about to do something important. My argument today is that somehow in education we have lost emotions. We have become what people in affective neuroscience are calling uh, cortex cortex centric. Right? We're sitting here doing computational magic, but forget about the systems that actually created us, which is our emotions. I forgot to remove those transitions, so I'll just pass that those slides. So, integrating reading. So, what I would like to do today is to convince you to some things. So, I would like to convince you that integrating the reading for a so I'm not sharing with you the screen. How can I share with you my screen, please? Okay, sure, I got it. I think I think it's that one. Right. Can you see the slides now? Can you see the slide which is saying today I would like to show? Okay. I could. So basically, I want to convince you that integrating the reading for emotion model into digital humanities offers a compelling alternative to dominant structural and data driven approaches. So, big data mining approaches. RFE foregrounds affective engagement, neuroaesthetics, and reader agency, which is that subjective component, and reframes text not as closed systems, but as emotionally structured experiences. It proposes a paradigm in which AI supported interpretation is no longer driven by data extraction, but by deep engagement with meaning, emotion, and, as in my case, pedagogy. So these are certain fields in which large data or digital in which data from text is used, and in the field of digital humanities. So I will not read them, you can actually look at them. There are systems which are applied to gather that data, but these are usually large data systems. So when they actually extract data, it's usually in very robust way, not allowing for individualization, personalization, and smaller, more nuanced analysis. So, for example, here, so what I'm not going to tell you is how many metaphors appear in 1000 novels. That's not the interest of the RFE model. But how can we use digital tools to help readers or students feel what a metaphor does to the soul? We still have a soul. Not what does a heat map of a text show, but how can we use AI to track emotional movement in a story, the way a child feels it, or a reader, an adult reader feels it? So, why emotions? I do not have in this talk specifically time to go into details of the theory, but I would be really, really disliked by especially one of my PhD students, if I did not mention the name of Professor Jack Panksepp, or Jak Panksepp, actually, it's how you read his name. So he established the field of affective neuroscience. People very often describe him as a scientist who made the rats laugh. So, what he did, he identified emotions as primary organizing forces in how we interpret and relate to the world. Emotions structure how we interpret and relate to the world. Emotions, everything else is definitely enough. I mean, I'm obviously not a neuroscientist, but I'm using and simplifying and stitching together readings of neuroscientists. So, in a very, very nutshell, what it means, we feel here and we map things in a more nuanced way on our frontal cortex, for sure, probably everywhere else. But that's a kind of like polarity that helps us to imagine the difference. This is rough uh, uh, estimation, and this is I don't hate, I maybe dislike, maybe I don't hate and don't dislike, but would do things differently, this kind of granularity. There are other names in the field. Some of them you probably have heard about. Some of them you should hear about, like, for example, Professor Ian McGilchrist, a star in affective neuroscience. There's 3,000 podcasts on him and with him on YouTube nowadays. So what we will do today, we will talk a little bit about the purpose. We will talk a lot about the method. I will show you how I dig out things out of. I work with ChatGPT myself for a specific reason, because I pay for my AI. And as an academic, I really do not have the money to and time to play with every AI system, right? So I'm here demonstrating to you my work with ChatGPT and the significance of what I will show you to digital humanities. Oh, okay, I have to give a shout out about our recent book. Actually, the main editor of the not editor. We actually this reports on our research. So that's not chapters; it's all research. Book, multisensory called the first author is Lala Bumela Sudimantera, my former doctoral student. So method matters. Method matters. I wish these transitions were faster. I always forget about this, but somehow PowerPoint does that. So this is my little whinge about education. You know, the older you go, the more grumpy you get. I never knew that it was going to happen to me. So let's look at the bottom one. So digital humanities and I offer transformative potential, in my view, but only if we use them to question, reimagine, and reclaim education as an intellectual and creative pursuit. Why am I saying this? It's because we need to, as teacher educators, myself, an educator in general, we need to give our students a little bit, and also teachers who are practicing education out in schools, we need to give them a little bit of freedom to think and err, right? When we don't allow them to err, they cannot think. When they don't think, they can reimagine things. We are basically in the loop of slavery. And if it was a slavery to maybe the recent book, that's okay. But we're actually stuck in education to some models from 100 and 200 years ago. So that's a bit sad to look at. So in order to make this big claim, and obviously I can winch now. I managed to work myself to a position in life that I can winch officially, but I do want to show you some proof of it. So this is a book that is produced, a pamphlet produced by the Australian government, the one I just showed you, which is the NAPLAN National Australian program for basically national tests for literacy and numeracy. And so it has guidelines for how to assess how students' texts produced for this test should be assessed. And obviously, what happens, the particular guidelines are not training just assessors, but they are also training teachers. For some reason, what I would do in the classroom with my students is absolutely wiped out by a policy. A policy that, as you could, I'm not going to go back to the slides, but basically, that particular document was produced in 2010, probably legitimized on the basis of some thinking in 1990s. 1990s thinking was probably legitimized by some models from 1970s, 80s, old as old can be. And today we know that maybe in the past, I don't know, science progressed slowly, I don't know, but today we're fast. So I'll show you the problem here. So one of the NAPLAN tests resulted in this text by students. So I pulled it out from a publication by two renowned linguists in Australia. And basically, according to these two linguists, this text is reasonably well written. In fact, they defended it as very well written. Now, the examiners, NAPLAN examiners, didn't like it for whatever reason. So there's this conflict. Both share the same framework for thinking about text, yet judgment differs. Now, anybody normal, if you ask them about this text and they read it, they would think, oh, whatever. And then when the text ends with a sentence, so this is an accurate recount of my 2 days with Zip, you kind of feel startled. Where is this word accurate recount coming from? It was never mentioned before, like orientation. I've been asked to produce a recount, right? So maybe it can finish with Here it is. This is an accurate recount. But all of a sudden, from nowhere drops this conclusion. And I wouldn't be arguing about it so much yet myself. Students are students, they're little. And it says, so is this an accurate recount of my 2 days with Zip? Why with Zip? What was about Zip that when you read the word Zip at the end makes so much sense or creates just really amazing conclusion that connects all the pieces in the text? That's what you would like to do in a conclusion. In fact, if you use the reading for emotion model, which I'm not describing as at this very second yet, if you finish the text with, so this is an accurate recount of my 2 days with a Zordian, someone from Zord, you go, okay, yeah, funny, it becomes funny. Right? So what happened? Somehow something got lost, and somehow the student who was trained as a technician of text, not as a writer, not as a person who feels the text, but as a person who performs structural adjustments to text or application of grammatical structures. And that's a text is basically a stitchwork of different grammar structures, right? So in that case, yes, Zip would be fine. But if you want to actually produce a text that impacts on the reader and you think about the reader, after all, a reader is taking 2 minutes out of their life to read you, right? Don't waste their time. Give them something funny, maybe something, I don't know, some take home message. And if we finish, so this is an accurate recount of my 2 days with a Zordian, you go, oh yeah, I might actually start reading about the Zordian. So then you read the ending, and then you feel motivated to read from the beginning. Well, it didn't happen to this. Not only didn't happen on this text, but also the linguists felt that finishing with the word Zip was all right. Of course they would, because they don't have a proper model. So these guidelines have different strange categories. I don't have the time. I'm just putting them here for the record. So if the lecture is recorded, you can actually stop here and reread it for yourselves. So the guidelines that there were. But notice, before I introduce you to the reading for emotion model, notice one thing. When you look at the Naplan approach, and the relationship in the middle column, what's connecting the orient, engage in the audience with text structure, assess, orientation, and complication? They almost feel, each of those categories in the middle column feel like isolated islands. And then evaluate the presence and crafting of ideas. So you just have this checklist. Now I'm going to check for ideas. Okay. Now I'm going to check whether it orients and affects the reader. Okay. Now I'm going to check whether it has lexical connections. And then I'll measure descriptive detail and portrayal. It's literally, it doesn't have the thing that pulls all these elements together. We'll come back to this, but when you look at the reading for emotion model, before I introduce it to you, and I will gradually, look at this. The first one on the right, the first cell says, focuses on how the writer intends to affect the reader. The next one examines how smoothly emotional stages progress to create cohesive emotional journey, uses aesthetic principles to assess how ideas contribute to emotional impact and sustain reader engagement. So you can see that emotion is the glue that holds the evaluation. So this is so we obviously have the method for evaluation and so on. Obviously today we have lots of tools that for different purposes develop from the reading for emotion theory. But you can see that one is that the Naplan approach is isolate, nothing glues it together. Here we have emotion, everything is tethered to the concept of emotion, like a hanger, right? So we have this what I call the linguistic approach, which looks at the text from the perspective of different structures. And as a result, when it comes to working with humans, somehow it feels that that method is not actually communicating, not reflecting the concept of the text as humans understand what texts are. Now, what I'm saying to you obviously was criticized. You can see this Australian Education Research Organization. So it's a ministerial report. There's a few of them have been written criticizing NAPLAN's guidelines, but not really pinpointing and to the need for reconceptualizing the guidelines. They criticize the guidelines, but they don't actually dare or can't see that we should actually approach the whole job of assessment from a different, modernized, reimagined perspective, maybe actually humanized. So I asked ChatGPT, why is it that SFL, all the linguistic models that I used for NAPLAN test, why are they not working? Why they don't have this cohesive element? And it came up as he. For me, it's he. I don't know. For you, it's she. Lots of people who are my friends say it's it. It's an it. All right. So ChatGPT said, well, it doesn't have a theory of communicative purpose. It just has grammatical purposes but not communicative purpose. This is very interesting because if you teach children to produce text for which they will be then assessed, so if you teach children to produce text but you don't teach them that text are agentive, texts are for the community, texts are for you to win. Sorry to use that word. Apparently nowadays to win is actually a sin, but we all want to win. I really would like not, I wouldn't want to fail this presentation. I want to win. I want to win your hearts and I want to win your minds, right? So if we produce a text in order to win, there is a communicative purpose that drives the whole coherence of my presentation. But most of all, what I really like, I always knew it, but not in the same way. I used to ask my students, where's the student there? But I really loved how ChatGPT yesterday popped up with this statement. It doesn't have a theory of the reader. You can see that I nicely, gradually indicate to you what ChatGPT created and what I created, because anyone who is today saying that they produce all their presentation by themselves, first of all underestimates their own potential, and second, or maybe covers up that they didn't use ChatGPT. Honestly, how can you today not use such an amazing tool? I really like it. Doesn't have a theory of the reader. That's why the things are not connected. So we have concepts of language, many concepts of language, and I put these baskets there because it's an easy way for me to use an icon that communicates that they are transactional models. Transactional models come from Dewey, God knows from whom else, but what they really miss, they miss Pierre Bourdieu, they miss the purpose, right? They miss the purpose. So yes, language is history. We are historical creatures, but we're not just historical creatures. We are creatures within a network of different capitals. So you can look up what kinds of capitals if you're not familiar with Bourdieu. So what was it? Social, status, economical, and knowledge capital. But right. So I'm just basically, so what I'm saying is, yes, language is both social and individual. None of us speaks. You don't speak like your wife. I don't speak like my husband. My husband doesn't speak like his mother. We each of us develop our own way of being in the language in order to win what matters to us, or win what we see as relevant to us within the network of different capitals. Capital is the purchasing, maybe it is purchasing power, what it purchases for us. So in the reading for emotion model, we participate in fields of human activities in a way that we accumulate the different capitals, so we navigate through those different capitals. But when we produce text, those texts are filtered through the way we think we want to affect the other, right? So language is emotionally, it's an emotionally structured communication. When your friend says to you, how was the movie, you say, oh, well, not really good. But when you write a review, you do it differently. When you do a review for the local club of seniors, it's structured differently. For academia, differently. Purpose driven, always. We navigate social relationships in relation to goals that we see as important to us. So there's a subjective thing, that aspect. Right. So that would be the main important things. Okay. So yesterday, so my students, my doctoral students, have not seen that, because I thought yesterday that was sort of a residue I had in my head from a keynote I gave in Cambodia just last February. And so I thought to myself, let's start in a difficult way to that. So let's do that. So what do we do with this picture? I'm not sure how many of you can actually recognize this picture. So it's Van Gogh, and it has a name, something about stars. Table under the stars, I don't know, right? So what do we do with, so why with the picture? Because, well, for two reasons. One of them, because it's difficult, and the other one, before we started producing texts, like the way we think in print culture and text orally, people say that we draw first. So drawing precedes writing. I don't know. I haven't been there 2 million years ago or whenever. But I thought, so what do we do? What does the reading for emotion do with a painting? What can reading for emotion offer to someone who wants to look at the painting as a text? So I asked ChatGPT, and look what we do. In the reading for emotion model, we do not just use the concept of emotion as a structuring force. We also use, so emotion is one concept that I extracted from affective neuroscience, and there are other ones, but one of them is Ramachandran and Hirstein, I think in 1999, produced this amazing publication, and there are on YouTube videos of lectures produced by Ramachandran on aesthetic and neurological theory of aesthetic experience. That's what it is. So here's this picture, Van Gogh's Cafe Terrace at Night. Now that's the title. So we're applying here Ramachandran's principles of aesthetic experience to a painting. And look what's happening here. What it isolates, isn't it very interesting? And computer generated that. So the way I taught ChatGPT, I took a text that I analyzed using, say, Ramachandran's principles. Now, being a human being, I produced a really, really scruffy analysis. So what mattered was consistency of analysis. What didn't matter was its scruffiness, because we all know that the way we talk to ChatGPT and ChatGPT does the analysis, qualitatively, they're very different analysis, right? One is actually scruffy and the other one is like this. So it came up with isolation, and I want to read it to you because I want you to feel it. ChatGPT the other day produced this beautiful sentence for me. The texts are not just structured, they are felt. So I want to put you through the experience of feeling it. I'm watching the time. I'm watching the time. Yeah. All right. So isolation, focused attention on a single emotional cue. The glowing yellow cafe. Remember, the yellow cafe is sharply isolated in color and luminosity from the surrounding night. Emotion evoked, warmth, intimacy, human presence, right? So there's this cold of the sky, but against this cold, we have this yellow cafe. I hope you remember the painting. I'll just show it to you again. All right. So peak shift is exaggeration. What's exaggerated in this painting that makes us feel it even more or experience more? What it says is the contrast between bright yellows and deep blues is intensified beyond realism. Repetition of warm hues across the cafe deepens the emotional pull toward it. Yes, I'm not sure about you, but we sort of keep looking there. Emotional effect amplifies comfort versus cosmic vastness. What's contrasted, helping the brain to discard redundancy. What contrast does. Day, night, warmth, cold, activity, stillness are starkly opposed. Now, you can do these analysis, obviously, with your students, first using their own languages to describe what they see, compare, contrast, compare against different paintings, compare against different cultural expectations, and then you can look at ChatGPT and engage in the discussion, including comparisons across cultures. So there are other. I liked here perceptual problem solving. Where does the eye go first? The light, the stars, the subtle visual uncertainty draws the viewer in, right? So the more good painting balances between simplicity and complexity. And here ChatGPT says this subtle visual uncertainty, where to focus the eye, draws the viewer in. The pleasure lies in resolving where the focal point is, human or cosmic. Isn't it lovely? It doesn't tell you where you will look. It just says what problems you are solving. Just love that. So this is a nice way what ChatGPT did. This painting does not depict a scene, it stages an experience. I mean, anyone crying out there? I was, not really, but feeling it. A tension between intimate life and vast mystery. Isn't it what we are always kind of straddling? The warm, secure versus this universe that is speeding across itself and God knows going where. So Van Gogh achieves this not by realism, but through the emotional logic of perception, aligning precisely with Ramachandran's aesthetics. Okay, so I did that. And then what's next? You can ask, okay, we did the picture, we can do this with ChatGPT and with our students, and maybe we can apply it also to other paintings and then use digital tools to actually pull out some data across different paintings and analyze Van Gogh sort of in a more general way. So that's possible. But what did I do next? Well, I was evil. Let's have a look. I had fun. Did this. A table beneath the stars. You can see where are these stages coming from. You see them focus disturbance. This is another aspect of the reading for emotion. So I tell you now what I did. So reading for emotion has a number of strategies. One of them is a structure. Not this is not a structure of text, components of text. I will explain it later. But what I asked ChatGPT is to draw on its analysis of aesthetics that it just conducted and now create a text, a narrative using those contrasts and perceptual groupings and all of that, problem solving, and create a narrative that complies with those stages. Doesn't have to start with the focus, but that's another slide. And what it did, the warm hue of the cafe glowed like a lantern against the blue hush of the night. Mira arrived alone, drawn not by hunger, but by the promise of light in a world that felt dim. She paused at the edge of Chobs. The yellow terrace pulsed with invitation. Even as she sat, a shadow lingered across the square. Across the square, the night often offers no echo. Not only, I can't read it. The body. Okay, so there were just few people there. Their bodies at the table, their thoughts, however, elsewhere. Mira's hand hovered over her cup. The warmth does not reach her fingertips. An old man approached Mira, balancing a cup on a crooked tray. First time here? He asked. She nods. He looks past her, up at the sky. I don't know what he said, something like should be said. I don't know why it's translated badly here, but basically some come here for the place, but he comes here for the stars. His voice is low and his gaze steady. She stays for hours, and when she rises to leave, the old man raises the cup to her. Next time, bring a wish. Some nights we don't need answers, just a table beneath the stars, a place where light and darkness touch. And we remember that we are made to dwell in both. Now, I don't know where this copied itself badly, but other than that, so how did ChatGPT do that? So I showed you, and it gives me a beautiful analysis. So it tells me how the text is now organized across the different stages of the reading for emotion elements. And then it gives me emotion for each of the stages, and it also gives me a beautiful analysis in terms of Ramachandran aesthetics model. So say in here, basically, so the beginning starts with an isolation. The cafe's warm light stands out against the dark, for example. So it gives me this beautiful analysis, which is amazing. And then I asked ChatGPT, why am I identifying with Mira? Her in the coffee shop, feeling sort of by herself. Then an old waiter comes in and refocuses me away from the table and my loneliness with the eternal, with the sky. And ChatGPT says, in the story, Mira is not simply a fictional construct, but a designed emotional surrogate. Her experiences become legible to the reader through what the reading for emotion identifies as the focus and then a problem, disturbance stages, moments that activate the seeking system. So what it means here, seeking system is what Panksepp, the one that was making the rats laugh, said. Basically, seeking system is an emotional circuit in our brains that is present all the time, and pardon me, it's active all the time in our brain, even when we are asleep. Seeking systems, sometimes it's called exploratory system. So when what he's saying, her experience, so what ChatGPT is saying, her experience becomes legible to the reader through what the reading for emotion identifies as the focus and disturbance stages, which is the beginning stages of the text, moments that activate seeking. Like, I am now thinking, what will happen next? What will happen next? And how do I know what will happen? That's because of my own experience. So I'm connecting with Mira through my own experiences to confront and contest what I expect and what the story will bring. Um, so this reader's alignment with Mira's perception and eventual peace reflects the intentional modulation of affective states across the reading for emotion arc. So again, continuing my question about why am I identifying with Mira, ChatGPT explains in the focus stage, which is the beginning of a text, where the text draws the reader in. Mira is not merely a character, she becomes an emotional proxy. Her presence is structured to offer a point of affective resonance to the reader. She goes to a place that draws one in, especially with that contrast of dark and light, so the warmth draws us in. Characters function as vessels of affect, not just plot agents. Isn't it nice? Vessels of affect. So I feel with Mira. That's why I can start making predictions of what will happen to Mira, not only resonate with her or feel with her, but also make predictions and confront my prediction with the rest of the text. And ChatGPT keeps explaining to me what's happening next. By the time dialogue with the waiter and development stages arrive, Mira's unfolding emotional world has become the reader's own trajectory. We feel that, yes, here's people come here for coffee and warmth, but there is those stars. So we're not lonely. We're here to find sanctuary of sorts, but also while being aware of the vastness called dark. Her resolution feels like our arrival, not because the story says so, but because its emotional structure invites enactment, not analysis, right? So it involves enactment from us. I really, really like how we can use ChatGPT to interrogate the theoretical triggers, theoretically designed triggers of the reading for emotion model, and how much you can actually get out of that. So if the model is consistent, has principles that have a consistency, then ChatGPT will give you responses and analysis that are drawing just on your framework. This is extremely important. I was asking Cambodia, how do I get all these results? And it's because the model is consistent. And ChatGPT, if it actually goes somewhere else to look for information, it always aligns it with the model. So the responses or that knowledge that ChatGPT brings in from the internet is then aligned, laundered through my model, as opposed to dumped as an unanalyzed element. So I asked ChatGPT, how did you begin writing? How did you begin the writing of that mirror story? Now I had a purpose here because remember, I wonder what's the next slide. Remember here with this text when I said that when you read this story about Zip, you basically, someone stole 2 minutes out of your life. And that's because what happened here, that the student who wrote it didn't really know why they were right. Well, they wrote it for the test, right? And that's how we actually treat texts in education. We treat them as rehearsal. These are just basically worksheets produced for the teacher. They mean nothing, they do nothing. And students are uncommitted when they produce them. Consequently, uncommitted worksheets, they don't actually support transformative learning, learning that enables a student to grow the different capitals and as they assess their own personal, let's call it power, that the things they can do now in the society, they can't actually see or their own successes because they're not succeeding. They're just doing. Then the success is something in the real world. They only succeed in front of the teacher, but as soon as they are out of school, the teacher disappears. So these linguistically well-structured texts become meaningless because they always were. They had a very narrow purpose, which was to satisfy the teacher. Now, so what happened was the student didn't start with the purpose. Why am I writing this text? Because I want to introduce to them not just a friend, but someone who's an alien. Yes, so the whole text is about being a friend being an alien. And you finish the story by saying, and this was my day with an alien. Right. And look at this. When I actually asked ChatGPT to tell me how it began writing its story, it said the image, the cafe terrace at night, already carried a mood of quiet contrast, warmth and light nestled within vast, mysterious darkness. It communicated attention, the intimate, cafe, people, domesticity, and the infinite, stars. So I ask myself, what is this image trying to say emotionally? And the answer emerged was, some nights we don't need answers, just a place where light and darkness touch. So I had this hypothesis long time ago that we should actually start with the message. And I think we in our real lives, we start with the message. How do I want to affect this person? And consequently, you structure your text accordingly to actually effect that effect. Right. And ChatGPT said it itself that that's how it felt would have been a good idea to actually start thinking about composing a narrative based on that painting. So that's a very interesting cue or clue to us as educators. And then it says, this became the moral. Some nights we don't need answers. This became the moral, a moment of emotional clarity or affirmation. It was the emotional endpoint. And with the moral in place, I built the focus to emotionally contrast with a girl arrives seeking light in a dark world, emotionally and visually. The warmth of the cafe is a visual and emotional lure. So he established tone, gentle, reflective, emotional intent, seeking safety, connection, and the symbolic anchor, the cafe offered light, hope, and so on. Disturbance, dialogue. The story then needed disturbance. Disturbance is a problem, something that why you opened your mouth, right? So that's Bakhtin, I think. And Bakhtin, probably many people before Bakhtin, honestly. The history of philosophy of speech or communication didn't start with Bakhtin, but it did start somehow, it seems to me, in our educational context. So you open your mouth to break silence for a reason, right? So that's what disturbance is. Why are you talking? So the story then needed a disturbance, not a big event, but a subtle emotional misalignment. She's among people, but still feels apart. The dialogue allowed a secondary voice. The old man, the wisdom, right? Symbols here, symbols. The old man always brings the wisdom, brings the balance back to the story. To reframe the scene and offer insight, nudging her and the reader, remember, because she's a surrogate of ours, towards the eventual resolution. So here's the reading for emotion. It's got these stages. Um, a text doesn't have to follow exactly that canonical order. People ask me where I got it from. Well, obviously, I got it from a structure of an academic text. Focus is the introduction, disturbance is the problem statement, and dialogue is the literature review, right? All of that development. So, what happened next? Resolution is the conclusion, and the moral, where to from here. Now, why would I do that? Now, certain things are so obvious that we don't actually realize them. So it takes like years, or maybe months, or however long it takes you to think about it, to realize that academic text not only has the same structure as every other text, including street signs and including recipes. They all have the same structure. The difference being only that academic texts need to make this structure explicit because they are complex. They are not symbols. They are not just do this and do that, right? So they need to bring the whole structure of every text to focus. They need to be explicit. So all the elements of text need to be present in an academic text for clarity. Whereas other texts can play with that structure. Not only play with that structure, so here it's a typical, I used to use, I still do use fables. In my early childhood, doctoral student would be using fables a lot. When you read fables or text to children, you change your tone. So first you go, in a field one summer's day, this and this happened, and then and passed by. So what these stages of text that I just outlined to you, I think it's 6 of them, what they do, the way you can tell that we are moving to the next stage, emotional stage of the text, is because you are changing the way you read. First, it's a focus. In a field neutral, in one summer's day, a grasshopper did this and that, and then drama happened. Something interrupted the peace and joy. So then is the dialogue. So now they are negotiating. What are you doing here? Why are you here? Why aren't you playing with me? Well, why bother about winter? And then what happened next? Development, right? So this is the methodology in your literature, in academic text. Well, the ant went on its way and continued its toil. And then you change your voice again because the emotion that you communicate changes. And by noticing how you change the way you read something, you actually can very easily notice how texts weave those emotional journeys. So when the winter came, the grasshopper had no food. So now we have the resolution, and then we have a moral. Then the grasshopper knew it's best to prepare for the days of necessity. Even the way you read the moral is different than the way you were reading the focus, right? So texts actually are structured through emotions, and we can and I think that this model of focus, disturbance, dialogue explicitly identifies or helps us identify or look for where these shifts happened and what do they communicate and which emotion they communicate. And you can get ChatGPT to tell you here. Basically, when I was working with Sandaru, my master's students, on how working with pictures can help children with dyslexia to become increasingly aware about the concept of organization and structure, because that's the underlying problem of dyslexia. It's not just they cannot write or spell things. It's just they have general problem with organization. So we work with pictures, and it's very nicely how ChatGPT now can again mix together the stages of the text, emotional stages of the text. First is that focus, then something happened, and dialogue when they are negotiating. So it will identify the emotion of the event, but also it will actually read or help us to look at the drawing that the authors produced together with the fable, so that we can actually see how the drawing communicates all these feelings and all these events. So the story opens with the bold, exaggerated figure of the grasshopper. Yes, he's bigger than life, right? Who spends his days singing and playing the violin in the sun. And violin, I'm not sure if it's in Pakistan, but I think in Europe, Northern Europe, violin is a symbol of kind of like leisure, being carefree sort of thing. Like people used to, the fools used to walk around either with clarinet or with a violin, and just his upright stand, upright, right? So again, symbol of all is well. I'm as big as life. Animated posture and whimsical violin playing set a tone of carefree enjoyment, contrasting vividly with the surrounding emptiness. Well, that's very interesting, right? So it's not just the field, it's also empty. The picture doesn't. So there's also symbolism there in this drawing. I mean, who would know? Who would know? You wouldn't until you actually consult ChatGPT, and then you see the things that in at first glance are not there. So it's very interesting how the reading for emotion and its strategies not only sequentially organized according to emotion, the text, but also by marrying Ramachandran's aesthetic principles, we can now look deeper into not just the text but also the accompanying picture, and then with students and ourselves, extract also and analyze the symbolism in all of that. So the emptiness here, all these words are used by ChatGPT for purpose in its analysis. There is no background clutter. There's just me and the sun. The scene isolates him. You see, isolated against the coming hardship, setting up the emotional tone of ease and avoidance. All is well, leisure. And disturbance as winter approaches, the mood shifts, right? The grasshopper finds himself hungry and so on. So that's analyzing the picture. Does it throughout all the stages? That's very interesting. I wanted to show you why I have this emotion, why I felt it was important to break text into emotional shifts. Not only so that we can better understand the text through emotions, through emotional shifts, but when you work with students and your students are given the task to construct something, whether an academic essay, an abstract, or even a narrative, a poem, they need tools. I mean, you have to be, I don't know, Joseph Conrad to just sit down and just more things come out, just to simplify his life, from my perspective. But a normal human being is overwhelmed. So here's how the linguists offer you help. They took a text and they said, you see, you can divide every text on the planet into three elements. So it's a little bit of the beginning, a little bit of the end, and then in the middle is everything else. Now, that's not very helpful. Like you tell your child, okay, well, write the bit of the beginning, then write everything else, and then just finish it somehow. So I can't think of more simplistic way and unhelpful way in education. And there are other problems with this text. Look at this, where it actually focuses, this kind of analysis focuses reader's attention on, I woke up slowly and found I was alone. It kind of says it's important. Now, when you do reading for emotion, you notice a few things. First of all, you've got a pyramidal structure. Pyramid, the Egyptian pyramids. You've got pyramidal hierarchy here. Focus, there's only one focus in the text, and there's only one resolution. and each of those, and but we have this kind of like repetition here. So focus, disturbance, dialogue, development. And when you have a development, which is what happened as a result, then you can have another problem, another disturbance, and its own section that finishes with a development, and another problem happens, so it has its own section, disturbance, dialogue, development, and another section, right? Until we get to the moment of resolution. So that's very interesting. So you can ask your students, what message would you like to communicate? What will we focus on? What message will we communicate? How will we break it down? And things like that. So, but notice that my main disturbance in the way how I apply reading for emotion indicates I didn't do it. I didn't do it myself. It just came out from the analysis that the first emotional drama that happened in this text is not that the protagonist woke up alone. Is I didn't expect my grandma to die though. And you can feel it. The reading for emotion allows you to actually identify that breakdown. I don't know what to call it, that emotional drama of the text. And obviously, all other events, even structurally as it is presented on this slide, follow from here. So it's actually grandma's death that generates all other events, not because this person woke up alone. Oh, and then what ChatGPT does, it is very nice. I will just stay here on this. What it does, it creates emotional journey of a text. So it picks up all these disturbances. So it has a main disturbance, grandma died, then the protagonist woke up alone, then something else happened, then something else happened, then something else happened. And it creates actually based on those uh, punctuated events, creates emotional journey of the text. It actually maps the emotional journey of the text. Isn't that interesting? It's every word I'm producing is practically a new vocabulary in text analysis. So emotional journey of the text. It's really lovely. And you can do it with a machine. Another thing you can do, which is obviously so these were the sort of like global perspectives on text, but now you can actually do a very analytical for analysis, so examination of the text. So you can start with, because every smaller aspect of the text is actually organized according to the emotion that its particular stage is communicating. So it's a kind of a stitchwork. So why in a field one summer's day? You can have a discussion with students. Now ChatGPT here produce very nice suggestions here. In a field, it feels open. So sets a carefree, expansive emotional tone. It feels open but not innocent. There is an air of detachment, a hint of indifference from nature, as if the story is unfolding within a larger rhythm that the characters do not yet fully understand. Well, and then in the middle column, I'm not going to read it now, but basically, field, it's something that your body, if you come from the northern hemisphere, your body knows what it means. Your brain may not know, but your body knows. It's a place of uncertainty. It's not a shelter. The fable wouldn't happen if the fable started with in a shelter. In a shelter, conditions are stable. There's always something there in a shelter stored. In a shelter, you feel safe. You can always find warmth, and maybe a miller will throw some wheat there for winter, right? So shelter is feels safe, but the field doesn't. So it's already creating this uncertainty, and you can go with students and actually analyze every element of a story. I usually do it in a way that I remove in a field one summer's day, because I feel that the sentence can be grammatical without those phrases, and ask my students, Why did the author include these phrases in the sentence, even though the sentence would be perfectly good without perfectly grammatical without those elements? And I can tell you that with my Australian native speakers of English students, we can sit for 2 hours and they will not know. So it's a very worthwhile analysis. Now, if you ask ChatGPT actually point blank why in the field, here it came up with 4 responses for me. My students couldn't come up with one. Right, so there's just continuous. So the significance of the reading for emotion to digital humanities. First of all, it offers a principled critique of reductionism in digital humanities, challenges models, or maybe not challenges, I think offers an alternative to models that reduce language to quantifiable features or sentiment tags, which is these big data organizations of text that count what can be counted, but still leave the text seem meaningless. It redefines textual analysis as a study of emotionally structured experience, not structural conformity. Right? So it's not about the externalized structure of grammar, but it's about our relationship with the text. Reading for emotion reframes AI not as a content replicator, but as a tool for navigating and constructing emotional meaning. So I have a model, I have particular strategies developed in the model, and then I ask ChatGPT to answer certain questions for me. How did you go about? Um, so, how would you analyze this painting? Would you be able to use the RFE model and actually create a narrative? How did you go about um, constructing this narrative? And why is it that I feel about Mira that she's me, and so on. So you can do get a lot of out of ChatGPT with the emotional analysis, because the emotional analysis allows you two things. It allows consistent responses as a framework, but it allows you to enter text from many different questions from many different angles. And ChatGPT produces increasingly creative yet consistent and illuminating responses. I am not saying it is a Jesus of thinking. The Jesus here is you, is your model. It's your internal consistency of the model. And then ChatGPT works with something which is, if it is internally consistent, it can produce actually quite illuminating analysis. It also, the model introduces coherence as an affective, not linguistic phenomenon, assesses through the relationship between disturbance and resolution, not textual, which is cohesion, which is like things like, does it have prepositions, does it have some other structural elements. It shifts, RFE shifts digital humanities from surface extraction to reader-centered transformation, asking what the text intends, resolves, and asks the reader to feel. Now, I hope I left so we have some more here slides describing the I'm awfully conscious of time, so I want to, yes, you can produce this, you can do it across different texts. So you can do the analysis, emotional trajectory analysis with ChatGPT of a single text, and you can do these across different texts, and then you can actually ask ChatGPT to generalize. So this one here is basically an emotional trajectory of this text, of the narrative that ChatGPT created itself. So now here we can have the trajectory here in relation to the emotional stages of the text, but then it produced for me, put the sentences there. So warmth of the cafe, then Mira feels alone. And then I asked it to actually produce the same graph, but now plot or annotated with the emotional and with the aesthetic aesthetic quality that it was communicating for each of those stages. So you can do that. So once you've done with one text, I've done a similar analysis just recently with a master student. So basically, you can do it across one text, second text. So if you have whatever amount of text, then you can generalize and create the big data analysis, but actually bottom up as opposed to just staying at the abstract level. So here, so for digital humanities, and RFE enables rubrics, tags, or visual models of coherence based on emotional resolution, not grammatical cohesion. So you can apply these things to various historical texts as well, or even in the context of education. So the only limitation on the bottom I have found was exactly what I was saying, but so it doesn't. So limitation second row from the bottom, not suitable. The reading for emotion for bulk processing of thousands of texts, but offers depth in return. In education, I don't have the time to discuss all of this, but my student Sandaru created this literature review with all these categories with meta for processing of the text, and then we use that summary. We turned the summary of that literature review into a framework, and then we looked how different interventions in teaching dyslexic children can be then improved based on the, say, reading for emotion model and all the literature we have collated together in order to get ticks in every box for the middle column. So that was very, very helpful. So reading for emotion offers digital humanities a set of analytical and design strategies grounded in how humans feel, resolve, and make meaning, bringing emotional logic, neuroaesthetics, and communicative purpose to the center of digital textual work. And thank you very much for today. Yes, it was a pleasure to give this presentation to you today. Thank you kindly. Thank you so much, Professor, and thank you very much to this whole center. Thank you so much.
Hello.
I can't believe it. Fucking ChatGPT stuffed up.
Really?
Not that novel by ChatGPT about Mira. That narrative was so beautiful, and I copied from ChatGPT, and it had mistakes. So I lost the mood.
Mm. I, you're lucky to have me. I haven't been watching all the time. I had a wonderful little problem, which was that one of the cats peed on your computer.
Oh my God.
So I had to. It's about the time when I was trying to connect.
How do you
Because
allow your
that's
kids to
the
behave
computer.
like that? None of our kids would have ever peed on a computer.
Well, it's not. Anyway, I happen to. Well, I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What can I tell you? I think we're rushing around trying to get it fixed.
Yeah, but it's
And,
interesting that when we had our cats and dogs, every one of them was so well behaved.
Well, they're all well behaved, except that we have many of these animals, and they sometimes attack each other, and then one of them is maybe a little more whatever. Anyway, I wasn't able to watch everything, but I saw the beginning, and I saw the end, and I saw parts of the middle, and one thing that I did notice is that they were very warm.
Yeah, very warm.
And here it's raining, and so the lights just flickered. That's a good sign. Yeah, anyway, they were very warm. They were very, very nice. They didn't smile much, but they were very nice.
Yeah.
Oops.
Well,
Lights
it
are
was
flickering.
novel enough.
How long did they want you to speak for?
I don't know, an hour?
Well, you spoke for much more than an hour. You spoke for close to an hour and a half. Or an hour and 20 minutes or something. But at least that gave you the time to speak in some detail.
Oh my God, I'm exhausted. Yeah, sorry, I'm just so exhausted. I'm so pissed off with ChatGPT, but it's okay. I'll get that corrected. It's okay. I only gave a notice about this webinar like 3 days ago or something, or a week ago, so I had very little time to prepare.
No, I think you did very well. I think you explained it pretty clearly.
I explained enough, like 80% clearly. Okay, so it's good enough. Anyway, they are inviting me. I think so. I mean, it was mind-boggling. It was so new.
Yes.
I appreciated that it is mind-bogglingly new, mind-bogglingly new. I mean, the more information I put into it, the more I see that I'm stars away from everybody else. Like everybody is somewhere like focus and disturbance, and I am somewhere like dyslexia.
Okay, I'm going to go.
You've got to go. You should see you know what I have to do? I have to create out of this whole mess in my apartment, which is disgusting. I have to clean it, spotless, pack stuff myself. I'm going in 10 hours. In less. At 12 o'clock, I'll be leaving my apartment. I have to clean the fridge. I have to clean everything. Everything I have to wash and clean.
Why are you leaving? I thought you were leaving on Thursday. or Friday.
I'm meeting you on Saturday.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm leaving now. I'm leaving now for Canberra.
Really? Oh, okay.
I'm leaving now. In a few hours, I'll be gone, so I have to clean up now. So I'm gonna tie up my hair now. My beautiful hair. I'm gonna tie up and start with the bathroom and my bedroom and here and pack and Amy's house where I have to dump some things and then I'll be ready. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, I really do have to go. Okay.
Just wait.
Wait.
The last time I spoke, you said you were so clear, you were so good. You didn't say it today that I was clear and good. It was
Because
so.
I didn't hear all of it. I didn't hear all of it. So I was cutting in and out all the time.
Yeah, but I think that the main thing was that it was novel, and I think that's good.
Yeah, no, but I think everything went very well.
Except for the bloody narrative story, but it's okay. I think everybody can live with it.
Yeah.
I mean, ChatGPT. I mean, I squeezed out of ChatGPT so much that people don't even realize how much you can squeeze out of that bloody thing.
And it's getting better.
I didn't use the other one because I was too afraid for things to fuck up. Does it remember everything you did in four?
What's that?
Does it remember everything you've done using four or zero? Does
I
it?
think so.
Okay.
Well, it remembers, you know, and it's I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know because it has a thing called memory, and it's if you put this if it stores things in memory, then it remembers it forever. If it doesn't, then it kind of it remembers what it does.
Okay, so I'll have to test it. All right. Okay, Koki, I'm packing now and cleaning the house and God knows what else. Okay, Koki, stop back.
All right. writing. Hi, Anya. How are you?
Hi, baby. Did you manage to watch it?
Well, I haven't really.
Oh, fuck, I told Emmy to share the new link. What you do, you have to go. Yeah. Anyway, I've got it recorded. It was good, but it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. Because ChatGPT, I didn't read what ChatGPT did, and ChatGPT fucked up some print. It inserted in the print the way it was thinking. Stupid piece of shit. I'm gonna underpay them now.
So did you record it on?
Yeah, obviously. Just have to check whether it
I'm
is.
glad it went well.
It went okay. It went okay. I realize now how far I am away from everybody. I mean, with every master class, with every master